Everyone always said Ryan was the golden child, the one who never got in trouble, never stepped out of line. The kind of guy who ironed his shirts even in college, who used coasters religiously, who brought wine to dinner parties with the label perfectly facing out. And me? I was the cautionary tale, the problem child. I've been sober for 5 years now. No relapses, no slips, just meetings, therapy, and a lot of nights spent alone staring at the ceiling wondering if I'd ever stop being the screw-up in everyone's eyes. But in my family, 5 years clean doesn't erase what they think they know. They still watch me closely when I pick up a drink, even if it's just club soda. They still flinch when I laugh too loudly, still exchange glances when I arrive late, like they're bracing for me to cause a scene. Every holiday, it's the same tightrope. Smile, help set the table, don't talk too much, don't eat too little, and above all, don't react. Because if you react, you're starting something. And Ryan? He never misses an opportunity to remind everyone who I used to be. Last year at Christmas, I brought homemade cookies. I made them with almond flour and honey, something new I'd picked up in recovery. I watched him bite one, then raise an eyebrow and say, a little dry. But I guess baking's safer than binge drinking, right? The room laughed. Even Mom chuckled, gently. And I smiled too, pretending it didn't feel like someone had reached inside me and pinched the most fragile part. That's his skill. He doesn't stab. He pokes. Little cuts no one sees bleed but me. So when Christmas rolled around this year, I already knew what to expect. My parents' house looked like a postcard, string lights draped perfectly along the gutters, the smell of cinnamon and turkey hanging in the air. I brought a bottle of sparkling water and a gift basket I put together myself. Lavender soap for Mom. Gourmet coffee for Dad. A book for Ryan's wife. I wasn't trying to impress anyone. Just trying to be normal. Present. Not the one they tiptoe around. Dinner started off fine. Laughter, wine pouring, forks clinking against plates. I stayed quiet, sipping my drink and laughing when appropriate. Then, somewhere between the roast and dessert, Ryan raised his glass and smirked in that signature way of his. Just water this year, he said, voice dripping with pretend innocence. Come on, don't get drunk this time. Remember last Christmas? My hand froze midair. I didn't drink at all last Christmas. Not a drop. But that's not the point. He said it with a wink, and a couple of cousins chuckled. Even my dad half smiled and looked down at his plate. I looked around the table, my face hot. And I don't know what changed in that exact moment. Maybe it was how calm I felt inside. Maybe it was how long I'd been carrying this weight. But I heard myself say it before I even realized I was speaking. I put my glass down. Let's talk about what you did when I was 16. The room went dead quiet. Ryan blinked, fork halfway to his mouth. What? I looked directly at him. You remember the night Dad's car got wrecked? The night everyone believed I snuck out, got drunk, and crashed it. I felt my mother's eyes on me. My father had stopped chewing. I didn't crash that car, I said softly. You did. Ryan laughed, but it came out weird. Too fast. Okay, what are you even? You came home wasted. Took Dad's car and smashed it into that guardrail off Palmer Road. Then you panicked, wiped your prints, and made it look like I'd snuck out. And you let me take the fall. He laughed again, louder this time, but it sounded like static. Are you serious right now? You told them I took the keys. You said you found me passed out. I lost my phone, my car privileges, my college trip. You called me reckless. You made me reckless. My voice wasn't shaking. Not yet. Ryan stood up a little in his seat, eyebrows raised. Jesus, are you off your meds or something? I reached into my coat pocket and slid out a folded envelope. I got this from Martinez Auto, I said. They did the repairs on the car. The dates don't match your story. I was grounded in my room for 3 days when the car was supposedly dropped off for repairs. I have the timestamps. I slid the paper down the table. Dad didn't reach for it, but he looked at it like it was radioactive. I've had that for years. Just didn't say anything. Until now. Ryan snorted. You expect everyone to believe you kept this secret all this time? That's convenient. I took out my phone and opened a screenshot. I also talked to Eli. Remember Eli? Your old friend from high school? He finally responded to me last month. Said you called him that night, freaking out. Said you told him you wrecked the car drunk and blamed me. I slid the phone forward. My mom gasped. Ryan's face turned white. Just for a second. But I saw it. I saw the panic beneath the performance. Why are you doing this? He muttered. I stared at him. Because you made me hate myself. You made me believe I was broken. You told everyone I couldn't be trusted. I lived under that lie for 15 years. I looked at my parents. You watched me spiral. You called it a phase. You punished me, sent me to that therapist who said I was self-destructive. And all this time, I was carrying guilt that never belonged to me. Mom put her hand over her mouth. Dad's eyes were glassy. Ryan stood up suddenly, grabbing his coat. This is insane. You're pathetic. He stormed out, muttering something under his breath. The door slammed. And just like that, the noise was gone. No one spoke for a while. I sat down, hands in my lap, heart pounding, but steady. The turkey smelled the same. The lights were still twinkling. But something had changed. Me. After Ryan left, no one really knew what to do. The room stayed frozen in that awkward, echoing silence. It was like the air had thickened, like we were all stuck in a moment that didn't want to pass. I could hear my own breathing over the Christmas music playing faintly in the background. Some cheesy instrumental version of Silent Night. It felt cruelly ironic. My mom's hand was still over her mouth. My dad stared at the printout I'd placed on the table like it was written in another language. My aunt quietly picked up her wine glass and took a long sip, eyes darting to the door. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there. For the first time in years, I wasn't the one everyone was staring at with suspicion. Now, they were looking at me like they were seeing me for the very first time. Finally, Dad spoke. His voice was low and slow, like every word was a weight he had to drag across the room. Why didn't you say something sooner? I looked at him and gave a small, bitter laugh. Would you have believed me? He didn't answer. Didn't need to. Because we both knew the truth. Back then, when the car got totaled, there was never even a conversation. Just punishment. No room for explanations. No one asked me what happened, because no one thought I might be telling the truth. I was the moody teenager. The one who was always grounded for skipping class or mouthing off. The one who didn't fit the perfect family mold. Of course I was the one who did it. And Ryan? Ryan was untouchable. I used to wonder what it would feel like to finally speak the truth. I pictured shouting it, maybe throwing something dramatic across a room, demanding justice. But this wasn't that. It felt more like standing up slowly after carrying a boulder on your back for too long. The pain wasn't gone. It had just shifted, and in its place was something unfamiliar. Relief, maybe, or emptiness. I cleared my throat. I started drinking because of that night. That night ruined everything. I looked straight at my dad. I wasn't perfect before that, I know. But you stopped trusting me. Mom wouldn't leave me alone. You both treated me like I was dangerous. And I started acting like someone who deserved the punishment I was already getting. Mom wiped her face. Her mascara had smeared under her eyes. I thought you were lying. You always lied, back then. Because I figured it didn't matter anymore, I said. No one was listening anyway. Dad reached for the mechanic's report, but his hands were shaking. He turned it over like maybe if he looked hard enough, the truth would change. That friend of Ryan's, he said. Eli, why did he come forward now? I shrugged. Guilt. Said he didn't want to be part of a lie anymore. My dad nodded slowly, jaw clenched. The same jaw I inherited, though mine looked different when it locked. I'd seen it in the mirror, in every meeting, every time I stared myself down. A cousin stood up and awkwardly offered to help bring out dessert. The rest of the table mumbled thanks, like someone had thrown a rope into a pit, and they were all scrambling to climb out. I stayed seated. Mom walked into the kitchen without a word. Her back was trembling slightly. I heard the fridge open, close, then nothing. I thought maybe that would be the end of it for the night. That they'd all pretend it didn't happen, sweep it under the rug like every other uncomfortable truth in our family. But then my dad surprised me. He stood up, pushed his chair in slowly, and said, "Come with me." I followed him down the hallway into his study, the room where we weren't allowed to go growing up unless he invited us. It still smelled like old books and leather. He closed the door behind us and sat down at his desk. He didn't say anything for a moment. Then he opened a drawer and pulled out an old yellow envelope. It was brittle at the corners. He slid it across to me. Inside were the photos from the accident, the ones I wasn't allowed to see when I was a kid. My parents said they were too upsetting. I pulled one out. The front of the car looked like it had been punched by God. The windshield was shattered, the front tire bent at an impossible angle. Back then, my dad said, I just couldn't believe Ryan would lie like that. About something that big. And you could believe I would? I asked quietly. He looked down at his hands. I guess I didn't want to believe either of you. But one story made more sense. I didn't answer. After a while, he said, he's always been so good at pretending. Yeah, I said. He's had years of practice. There was a pause. Then he said, I'm sorry. I blinked. It wasn't much. It wasn't enough. But it was more than I ever thought I'd get. I was hard on you, he continued. Your mom and we were scared. And I think we blamed you because it made us feel safer than admitting we'd raised someone capable of doing what Ryan did. I looked down at the photos again. Then I folded them back into the envelope and slid it toward him. You still have a chance to make it right, I said. With Mom. With me. But it starts with not pretending anymore. He nodded. Slowly. We sat there for another few minutes, not talking. Then I stood and left the study, walking back down the hall to a room full of faces that didn't know what to say to me anymore. And for once, I was okay with that. Because maybe silence was better than suspicion. Maybe silence was the start of them listening. The house was quieter than I'd ever heard it, even with all those people still inside. It wasn't the usual holiday buzz anymore. It was a silence that hummed with tension. Like the whole place was waiting for someone to press play again. But no one dared. When I walked back into the dining room, I could feel eyes on me, but no one spoke. My cousin Sarah gave me the smallest nod. My aunt cleared her throat and busied herself with collecting plates. Dessert was served, but barely touched. No one wanted to be the one to go back to normal first. It was like Christmas had been cracked open, and no one could figure out how to seal it back up. Mom eventually came back into the room. Her face was pale, her lipstick smudged. She didn't sit down, just walked over to me and gently placed a napkin-wrapped piece of pie in front of me, like some small offering. Like that one act might undo years of disbelief. I whispered, thanks, and she nodded, but didn't look me in the eye. When it was finally time to leave, people filtered out slowly. Hugs were quick, if at all. My uncle mumbled something about crazy night, and my cousin hugged me tighter than she ever had before, whispering, good for you. I didn't know what that meant, exactly. Good for telling the truth? Good for surviving the lie? Or just, good for finally saying it out loud? As I stepped into the cold air outside, I felt like I could breathe again. The sky was that deep, silent black, dotted with stars. The kind of sky that made you feel small, but not in a bad way. In a freeing way. I walked to my car, hands stuffed in my coat pockets, my breath fogging in front of me. I was about to climb in when I heard footsteps behind me. I turned. It was my mom. She didn't come close, just stood a few feet away, arms crossed over her chest. You should have told me, she said softly. I let out a breath. I did. Not directly, but I tried. You just didn't want to hear it. She flinched, and I regretted saying it, but I didn't take it back. Do you know how hard it was? I said, being told I ruined everything when I didn't even understand what I was being punished for? You stopped trusting me before I ever had the chance to earn it. She looked like she wanted to argue, or maybe apologize, but nothing came out. Instead, she stepped closer and said, Ryan's always had a way of controlling the room. I guess we all got used to it. That's not an excuse, I said. She nodded. No, it's not. I waited. Then she said, I'm sorry. For not seeing you. For not protecting you. It came out thin, like she'd never said those words before. Maybe she hadn't. I thought I was protecting the family, she added. But I was protecting a lie. The wind picked up, biting against my skin. But I didn't shiver. Thank you, I said. We stood there for a moment longer before she turned and walked back inside, slowly, like she wasn't sure she'd be welcome in her own home anymore. I got in my car and sat there for a while. I didn't start the engine right away. I just let myself exist. 15 years of carrying shame that didn't belong to me. 15 years of shaping my life around damage I didn't cause. Every relationship I sabotaged, every drink I took, every time I called myself broken, it all traced back to a single night and a single lie. And now? Now it was out there. The truth. But the thing about truth is, it doesn't fix everything. It doesn't patch up every scar or erase every bad memory. It just gives you the chance to start healing for real. And that was enough. The next morning, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Can we talk? I stared at the screen. I didn't have to ask who it was. Ryan had changed his number last year after a job switch. I never updated it. I left the message on read. A few hours later, he sent another one. I'm sorry. 2 words. That's all. No explanation. No excuses. No begging. I waited an hour before replying. I'm not doing this for you. I did it for me. And I meant that. I didn't want revenge. I didn't need him to grovel. I just needed him to know I wasn't afraid of him anymore. I wasn't hiding behind shame or silence or some distorted version of myself he created to keep his secrets safe. He replied once more, I get it. I'll leave you alone. And that was the best thing he could have said. I blocked his number after that. Not out of anger. Out of peace. Some things, once said, don't need repeating. The past happened. But I wasn't going to live in it anymore. That night, I went for a drive. Just around town, windows down, even though the cold made my fingertips numb. I turned up the music, something slow and steady. Something that felt like breathing. And somewhere around the old bridge near Palmer Road, the same one where the car had hit the guardrail all those years ago, I pulled over. I sat on the hood of my car, staring out into the dark. I didn't cry. I didn't need to. Instead, I whispered to the air, I didn't ruin everything. He did. The wind carried it away. And I smiled. Because for the first time in a long, long time, I felt clean. 2 weeks passed before I heard anything else. I didn't expect to, honestly. After Ryan's apology and blocking his number, I thought the whole thing was over. A scar finally exposed to the air after years of hiding it beneath long sleeves and fake smiles. But then Mom called. Not texted. Not emailed. She called. And that alone told me something was different. Her voice was soft, worn down in a way I hadn't heard before. Your dad and I were thinking of having everyone over again. Not for Christmas. Just a dinner. Something quieter. I waited for the catch. Then she added, only if you're comfortable. It took me a few seconds to respond. Will Ryan be there? No, she said quickly. He's not invited. That was a shift I didn't see coming. Ryan had been the center of every family gathering since we were kids. The golden thread tying everyone together. Even when he wasn't physically there, his presence always was. But now he'd unraveled. And in the mess he left behind, something else had started growing, something messy and uncomfortable. Sure, but also honest. Maybe even hopeful. I agreed to go. Not because I was ready, but because I wasn't afraid anymore. When I pulled into the driveway that night, the house looked smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I'd just gotten bigger inside. The door opened before I even knocked. My dad stood there, not with his usual stoic nod, but something closer to nervousness. Like he wasn't sure what version of me was coming through the door. Hey, he said. Hey. Inside, the dining table was set, but not fussed over. No centerpiece. No holiday music. Just real plates, warm lights, and the smell of roasted chicken. My mom emerged from the kitchen wearing a faded sweatshirt instead of a cardigan. That alone nearly made me cry. They'd invited just a few people, my aunt, one cousin, nobody loud. Nobody who would crack a joke at my expense or try to pretend things hadn't changed. And for the first time in years, dinner felt manageable. There were pauses in the conversation, but not the bad kind. The kind that meant people were actually thinking about what they were saying. Halfway through the meal, Dad cleared his throat and stood up. He looked at me, then glanced around the table. I owe all of you an apology, he said. Especially you. His eyes settled back on mine. We made a mistake. A big one. We believed something because it was easier than facing the truth. And it cost us a lot more than we realized. My fork hovered in midair. I let one of my sons carry something he didn't deserve, he continued. And I need to say it clearly. I was wrong. We were wrong. No one moved. Not even the air. I'm proud of you, he said. Not because you're sober or strong or doing better. I'm proud of you because you told the truth even when no one wanted to hear it. That takes more courage than I've ever had. And just like that, something heavy inside me cracked. Not in a painful way, but like a beam of light breaking through a boarded-up window. My mom reached over and took my hand. Her grip was gentle but firm. You don't have to earn your place at this table anymore, she said. It was always yours. We just didn't see it. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. Because if I did, I'd cry. And I didn't want tears to be the only proof that I was still healing. Later, after everyone had left, I helped clean up. Mom and I stood at the sink, passing dishes back and forth like we used to when I was younger, before the walls went up, before I stopped being her child and started being her problem. As we finished, she turned to me and said, Do you think you'll ever talk to Ryan again? I dried my hands and thought for a long moment. I don't know, I said. Maybe, but not because he wants it. Only if I do. She nodded, understanding. I just wish I'd seen it sooner, she said quietly. I looked at her. Me too. That night, I drove home the long way. Windows down, even though it was freezing. My fingers curled around the steering wheel, and I let the cold bite into my skin like proof that I was alive. Awake. In control. I passed Palmer Road again. Slowed down this time. The guardrail was still there, dented from some newer accident, different car. Someone else's story. I pulled over, just for a minute. Stepped out. Let the cold hit me full force. I walked up to the spot where I imagined Ryan's car had hit that night. I pictured the impact, the fear, the lie that followed. Then I pictured myself, 16, sitting on the porch the next morning, grounded, confused, blamed, already being rewritten into someone else. I whispered something to that version of me. I know the truth now, and I'm never letting it go again. The wind didn't answer. It didn't have to. I drove home in silence. And for the first time, the quiet didn't feel like punishment. It felt like peace.